Hey, welcome back, everybody. Once again, this is Marc Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on this weekend's NFL and college football cards. And the football games are well underway. And suddenly, we've got a race going in college football and the NFL as well. With that, I want to welcome you to the show. And I want to remind all of our listeners out there to please do us a favor if you haven't done so yet and hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like button while you're there, and why not ring the bell as well? We'll be really highly appreciative if you do just that for us. With that, I want to welcome our panel of experts to the show this week, as we do each and every week. First of all, the legend himself from Las Vegas, Jim Feist. Jim's got a little bit of a throat issue going on, a little bit of a rasp in his throat, but nonetheless, great to have you on board, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's called a frog.
A frog, okay.
That means bet on TCU this week, I'm guessing.
Oh, there you go. Andy looking for every edge he can get.
Don't make me laugh, please.
Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com in Las Vegas. Andy, I got to say this. I got your football newsletter this week, and I really thoroughly enjoyed what you wrote about these close football games and how if they hadn't, I believe it was field goals, if you take those field goals out, what the reversal of the scores would be last year in the National Football League as far as the playoff standings were concerned. That was
it was basically. I looked at two things. I defined the close games as those decided by a field goal or less. Now, sometimes it could be a 10-point lead that cuts to a 3-point lead, but it's still a close game. Or a game that was decided by a touchdown in overtime, which is about as close a game as you can get because you needed the extra points. And we'll talk about one of the dramatic changes that would have occurred. I think it was the most dramatic one when we talk about one of the featured games on this week's schedule.
Looking forward to that. Greg DePalma, our producer extraordinaire, joining us on the show as he does each and every week. Greg, how are you doing this football season?
Doing okay, even though last week was my first rough week of the season. And I wanted to ask you guys about this, maybe as good a time as any. Do you have, with all your experience when you handicap games on a weekly basis in football, do you kind of know, based on that experience, when you get off to a slow start of the week, let's say you're having a good few weeks and then a week comes up and you lose your Thursday game and you lose your Friday game and you lose the Friday game in a pretty weak manner where you get backdoor covered, and all of a sudden, don't you usually have that, I don't know if this is going to be a good week for me? Does that happen to you? Because it happens to me, because I can kind of tell when I'm going to have a bad week. I'm going to have one of those weeks. And it happened to me just as I thought it would after I had a pretty suspect Thursday and Friday.
I'll answer that question this way. Let's say you make 10 plays and you hope to go 6-4. You don't know which 6 are going to win. You don't know which 4 are going to lose. And you don't know what the sequence of wins and losses may be. Some week the losses may come early. Sometimes they may come late. Hopefully they never come at all, but it's just a matter of sequencing. And if I have a bad Thursday or Friday, whatever, I don't let it affect my weekend handicapping, because normally, in fact, I try as best I can to decide on all my plays for the weekend, Thursday through Monday, before the first games are played, so that I'm not influenced.
Sure.
The psychology of, oh my gosh, it's going to be one of those weeks. It's a difficult. It's easy to talk about. It's a lot harder to master.
I've been doing this 6 decades, and I'll guarantee you I've had weeks where I go 1-9, 1-11, 2-11, 2-9, 2-8. You're going to have it because it's random. You can go. I mean, I had one stretch in college basketball. I was 28-3. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to be consistent. Yeah. I hit 60%. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to hit 6 out of every 10. That means out of your long stretch, you're going to hit 6 out of 10.
So you've never been in a position to know. And the reason why I'm saying this is just because that, like, if you do, then it's usually good, because then you can say to yourself, well, things aren't starting out for me really well this weekend. Maybe I should just lay back with my wagers the rest of the way.
No.
The problem is you're looking at this incorrectly from the beginning. You should not bet any more than you can afford to lose. Number one.
Sure.
Number two, if you have clients that are following you, you need to not only limit your exposure, you have to limit their exposure. So if you're afraid to going 0-7, don't give out 7 plays. Give out 5, give out 4, give out 3. In other words, stay in the game. When you build up, you start the season off, you're giving out 3 games a week. If you have a good run in September and you're up good, maybe you can go to 4 games. Maybe then you have a good run in October, you can go to 5 games.
What if you've already given out the picks and then your week starts off really slow and you go...
Well, you start out defensively in the beginning. That means the first week of the football season, you're defensive. You're not going out there with 15, 20 plays. Everything in the beginning of the season is speculation anyway. So what I'm saying is limit your exposure from day one. And then only after you build up your bankroll can you increase your exposure.
And keep in mind, another thing to keep in mind is we all handicap with different styles, different factors. And some weeks the schedule does not present opportunities that we feel comfortable with. So you don't feel comfortable giving out more than a number. Other weeks, and it's like playing these the Circa Million or the Westgate Super Contest. You got to give 5 picks. Some weeks you'll have 8 games and you got to find 3 to eliminate.
Yeah.
Other weeks you like 3 games and you got to find 2 to add to it because the schedule is not always attractive. So you have to be somewhat flexibility.
You guys don't feel it like when you're hot in a positive way and when you're cold in a negative way. You don't have that feeling during the week that doesn't come up.
Well, let me tell you this, Greg. Last week, I'm going to give you an example. I really, really like the card. And so on our service, we used 4 selections in college football and 4 in the NFL. The college football plays went 0-4. Down in the dumps as much as you could possibly be. But Sunday morning when I woke up, I was as positive as I could possibly be. Why? Because I liked that card on Sunday, just like I liked it when I released it on Friday. The card didn't change. No. The players didn't change. For all intents and purposes, most of the lines didn't change. So it's another day, another way. And that's what it was in the NFL. And for what it's worth, we went 4-0 in the NFL. So you bounce back and you feel, you got to remember, like what we said before in the past, you don't win every war every week. You just win the battles.
And also the other thing is when you make a play, whatever side it is, you always should consider why it might be the wrong side. And it's not, in other words, and I've used this example many times. If you're looking at a game, take a sheet of paper, team A, team B. Write down all the reasons that you could play team A on the left side, all the reasons you could play team B on the right side. When you're done with that, if you take a look and you've got 10 reasons to play team A and 2 reasons to play team B, pass the game. Because there are generally almost an equal number of reasons why each team has a chance. It's just a question of which reasons you feel more comfortable in, which ones you think are more valid. Because these, especially in the colleges where the games are being played by 18 to 20-year-olds, but it happens in the pros too. Because, you've got the youth working against you in the colleges. You got family life working against you in the pros. These things that are extraneous to football all come into play. We never know, for the most part, when they're going to come up.
I'm going to say this, guys. It was a bad week for a lot of the Circa Survivor contest last week. A lot of the contestants.
They got destroyed.
The Grim Reaper paid a visit, and 7,432 people were knocked out last week. They started, I think, 15,000.
A little more than that. 7708. There are now 4,646 out of 18,718 that started remaining. I was one of those victims. In fact, I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. The imputed value, if everyone were to go the rest of the way, what's the value of an entry right now? $4,029 for the $1,000 investment. But I'll give you a little insight into how I looked at last week's schedule. I was looking at 3 teams to consider playing in Survivor. 2 of them won. The one I was on lost. Do I regret the play? No, I regret that it lost, but I don't regret making the play. Here are the 3 games. I was considering Cleveland and Minnesota. I was considering Minnesota. Good spot for them. They had been in London for Europe for the week because they played the game the week before. They had a rookie quarterback making his first start in Dylan Gabriel, and you had Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, who also as head coach had great success against rookie quarterbacks in that situation. So a lot of things. The problem I had with that one was that Minnesota going up against a Cleveland defense might not be able to outscore them. It's a good spot for, if you've got a great defense like Cleveland does, you're almost in every game, unless
And the
you're
only
going up
time you
against
felt
an
good
offense.
about that game, Andy, was in the final
At the very
30
end.
seconds when Minnesota
Exactly. Yeah.
come
So,
back
but
and won at the finish
exactly.
line.
So I can understand. Okay. And I said, I'm glad I didn't play Minnesota because it wasn't as comfortable a win as a survivor pick should be. Obviously, you take a 1-point win, but you like to get a game where you think you're very comfortable. Second game I considered was the Colts hosting the Raiders. And the Colts were like 6.5 point favorites in that range. And I took a look at it because I like to look at the quarterback play involved. And I said, okay, I've got two quarterbacks in Daniel Jones and Geno Smith. They're both experienced. Jones is having a very good year. Geno Smith is having a horrible year. The Colts are the better team. They are playing at home, but I didn't think I had enough of an advantage to feel comfortable going with Daniel Jones, especially since the Raiders were in almost like a must-win type situation.
And who did you go down with, Andy? That's the key.
Well, the game that, let's see, I was with 3,151 others who are on the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, boy.
And that was a game that had, you had, I call him abracadabra, drop the ball before he just crossed the goal line, which was shocking to the extent that we had, who was it, the kid on Indianapolis who did the same thing a week before, made all the highlight films, should have been a point of emphasis for every coach during the week leading up to the game. That happened. And then you had that weird play where the Titans threw the ball. It was intercepted. The interception was fumbled, and it moved back towards the goal line. And the Tennessee Titan, the team that originally threw the interception, ended up recovering in the end zone because that dropped ball by the goal line would have made the score, I think, 28-6 at that point. So it was an unfortunate loss, but I don't regret the play because I also said Tennessee was the worst team in football heading into that game. Their margin of defeat had grown each week from 1-2, 2-3, 3-4. They had shown very little life in some of those games. Even the week before against Houston, it was a 6-0 game going into the fourth quarter, and Houston scored 20 points to win 26-0. So even there, we could see it. Now, I did do one thing that turned out to be lucky smart. I did make a money line play, which I rarely do in the Survivor, but the Cardinals' history this season of not being able to keep leads in the fourth quarter. I think the only comeback they made was when they were down 20-6 to Seattle at home the previous week, and they ended up making it 20-20 before losing in overtime. I did make a money line play on the Titans just as a sense of, you know what, Arizona's the better team, but they're not really a very good team. But I think, Mark, as you've pointed out and others, Arizona's history recently has been they beat the teams they should beat, they lose the teams that they shouldn't beat. So that's how it happened. I don't regret the decision. I just had an unfortunate result.
That's what bad teams do, Andy. And Arizona, that number I gave you, 7,432, those trio came from only three teams. Arizona, Buffalo, and the Rams. That's how many people they disposed of.
And basically, the Rams were very close, 3,524. That was the number. Buffalo was 756, which is still a large number. But when you have over 3,000 people being eliminated on two games, that's more than 50% of the field.
That was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Before we get into our NFL football card this weekend, guys, and really a lot to talk about in the NFL this week, I want to do a little bit of just saying with you again, and I'm just putting together our midweek alert statistical newsletter, and the reason I'm hitting on that is because it's fresh in my mind. And I hit on this a little bit last week. We're down to now just 5 teams in the National Football League that are winless, have not won the yardage in any game they played. Just 5. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee. If the playoffs started this week, the Eagles and the Steelers from that group are the only 2 teams that would be in the playoffs. Despite the fact that they haven't out-yarded anybody, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia would be in the playoffs this weekend, despite their poor play on the field. On the flip side, there are 4 teams that have been perfect in the stats, have won the yards in every game they've played so far this football season, and that being Atlanta, Buffalo, Green Bay, and the Rams. And if the playoffs were to start this weekend, the Falcons and the Rams would not be in the playoffs. Hard to believe the Rams would not be in the playoffs if the playoffs were to start this week. So just a little bit of I'm saying type of stuff here from the playbook.
I want to ask the three of you a question, because one of the teams you mentioned is Philadelphia. And I'm just wondering, given that their great offensive coordinator from last year, Kellen Moore, is now starting to have a little bit of improvement there with the Saints, Is it possible, especially with all the things we've heard with A.J. Brown and Barkley's slow start, did the Eagles perhaps make a mistake in the offensive coordinator hire?
Well, there's an argument to be made there. I mean, for the way they've started so far, I don't know if you dump it all on him per se. But the fact of the matter is,
he's the one calling the plays, and he's the one designing the plays, and he's the one who's working them through in practice. And in other words, you should have gone after a clone of Kellen Moore, because apparently what Kellen Moore has done the last few years has worked beautifully.
it's worked real well.
Well,
we're going to hit on our top 3 games in the NFL this week, guys, and let's get the ball rolling that way if we can.
I was going to ask Greg, what were you going to say about that?
I had spoken to Anthony Miller, who is the Eagles contact here. I interviewed him on Monday, actually, to find out about this. And he actually pinned it on the head coach.
Really?
Yeah. And I was a little bit surprised. He said that, he says, you can't pin it all on the OC. OC definitely has a little bit to blame. The injuries along the offensive line has a little bit to blame, but the head coach is definitely the one that he's the one that controls everything. He's the one also that gets involved with the offense. So it's not like he just leaves the offensive coordinator alone to do whatever he wants. He's involved in that as well. So try and he, so bottom line is it's easy for us to sit there and the really good guy's gone and the new guy is struggling. Let's blame it on the new guy. And the new guy definitely has a little bit to blame, but the head coach too does deserve some of the blame as well.
Good answer.
Okay, guys, let's tear these 3 games apart. We've got 2 games, and we're going to hit our featured game, a big game on tap this week as well. First game, San Francisco 49ers traveling cross-country to take on the Tampa Bay Bucks. 2 football programs that I think have really a little bit overachieved this year, but good for them, especially Kyle Shanahan. With the team that he's had to play with, the cards he's been dealt, the injuries he's had to get through, and nonetheless, look at him, perfect in the stats this year. Jim Feist, San Francisco at Tampa Bay. Which way are you going here?
I'm going to play the over.
There we go.
I don't think I'll lay the 3 points in the game. I don't know if my voice sounds like a frog or what, but I'm going to play the over in the game. I think you're going to see some points. I think Mac Jones is playing well. Baker Mayfield's playing out of his mind. And this has been my prediction early in the summer, and Greg knows this well. I predicted Tampa Bay go to the NFC Championship and Baker winning MVP. And so far, it's looking okay.
It's looking better than okay so far.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Tampa Bay is still 22-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Still a lot of
great odds. That's great
there.
Odds, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though Baker's MVP odds have come way down, that's why it makes no sense. If Baker's going to end up being the MVP, doesn't that mean Tampa Bay is going to be in great chance to win the Super Bowl? So why wouldn't the Super Bowl odds come down too? So
you would think the MVP is going to be one of the 4 teams that plays in the divisional round of the playoffs, playing for the right to go to the conference championship game. You would think that that's where the MVP comes from, barring something totally unusual. Like, for example, if Saquon Barkley, let's say the Eagles were, let's say 9-8, missed the playoffs, injuries and everything. Let's say the defense was bad and he still gained the 2,000 yards. That might be the kind of exception. But normally, I believe history would show that the MVP is usually with a team that is contending in the final, 2 weeks of the playoffs.
It makes sense, Andy. That makes sense a lot.
Greg DePalma, what are you looking at here? Bucks, 49ers.
I just think the Bucks are playing out of their minds thanks to Baker right now. So it's hard for me to believe, especially with the injuries you talked about. Now, both teams have injuries. There's no question about that. But the Niners have more. And as great as their win was over the Rams this past week, I just find it hard to believe that Tampa Bay is going to lose this one at home. Even nobody even knows if Purdy's going to, when Purdy's going to play, and even Mac Jones is dealing with an injury himself. So you don't know if these receivers, you got to, whatever you could do, just make sure that you wait until Sunday, check the inactives, make sure who's playing. There's just no way the San Francisco is going to get over on a no Pearsall and no Jennings, and then Kendrick Bourne is going to go 13 for 160 again. That's a 1 week deal. It ain't happening again. So I just think, you ride Baker. And that's the thing, too, that you have to think about whenever you want to consider betting against Tampa Bay this season, or at least the way they're playing right now, is do you really want to put your money in a game where you're betting against Baker Mayfield?
Well, here's one thing that jumps out to me.
Mark, years ago,
yes,
Baker was guaranteed to be a success. And you know why?
Baker?
Yeah.
Oh, Cleveland Browns?
Cleveland got rid of him. Damn well he was going to be a star.
I kind of keep that nightmare window closed as much as I can, Jim, but you just won't let me.
You're right.
With a Cleveland nightmare, and it continues to keep going on. And now you've got Baker Mayfield to jump all over Deshaun Watson. But kudos to Baker Mayfield. He's done a terrific job, and everybody forgets he was the first player of the whole draft.
That's
in the
right.
year that he was drafted. He wasn't some throw-in or a quarterback that came out of the draft and surprised. I got to tip my hat to the young man. He's really, really energetic. He's played as good of football as anybody has from a quarterback position this year.
And so the team feeds off his energy, his enthusiasm, and his toughness.
I agree with that, Andy. You're right.
If there's a negative that he's had in his career, he's not done well in his career when he takes on teams that come up underdog upset wins. He's only 9-16 straight up into the number in those particular roles. But I think a little bit more important in this game is San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan has been outstanding in his career on the road against 750 or fewer opponents. He's been in that role 6 times in his career. He's won 5 of them straight up, cover the spread all 6 times. I cannot dismiss San Francisco in the underdog role, and the other knock I have against the Bucs this particular week.
Did you say 750 or lower?
750 or lower, yes.
Because aren't they at 800 right now, 4-1?
Yeah, I think so.
Tampa Bay
facing 750 or fewer opponents. And Tampa would not qualify.
Right.
Eat my words, okay? But remember,
I just want to make sure that I didn't have something wrong with my
you got that right, Andy.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to throw out there is you've got Tampa Bay comes in off that win last week. That huge surprising win again, as they always seem to do, in which they were out-yarded. But more importantly, they allowed in that game Seattle 463 yards. That's their season high for the Seattle Seahawks here. Now they're changing roles, going from a straight-up dog winner with a poor defensive performance, now laying points to a football team that's got a pretty hot hand at the craps table right now. So I'm going to take the points in this particular football game with the 49ers. And Andy, who are you going to look at in this game?
I like this Tampa Bay team a lot, and I'd like to be able to play them. But, this is a team right now, 5 straight games. I believe they're all 1-score games. They had, and San Francisco, you could say, is the toughest team they've played other than Philadelphia. They had that 3-point win at Atlanta to open the season. Then they had that 1-point comeback win that Monday night game against Houston at Houston. They opened at home with that wild, crazy finish, the 2-point win over the Jets. Then, of course, they lost. It was actually 31-23, and Philly took a safety, so they lost by 6 to the Eagles. And then last week, that back and forth game, the 3-point win. So, considering their history this year, and by the way, it was one of the reasons that I did play Tampa Bay last week at Seattle plus the 3.5, because they play so many close games that are decided late. So it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable laying any points at home with Tampa Bay, especially when you're getting up to 3 or higher. But I do think they're the better team, and I could see them pulling out the win. So I would probably pass. I think given Tampa Bay's history, maybe the way to play this game is you tease the 49ers up.
Well, this goes back to my classic. What do I do when I have a favorite that I like?
Money line.
Exactly. I like the money line, Tampa, and over the total points. Yeah, I do believe that Tampa is actually healthier this week than San Francisco is. I think that's a plus.
By the way, that's another thing to keep in mind. Tampa Bay's had all these injuries since the start of the season, and yet they keep winning. The only game they lost to was Philadelphia. So, we talk about injuries. Let's go back. When we're getting close to Thanksgiving, when we talk about Tampa Bay injuries, just go back and see what they did with all those injuries in September.
Jim, what do you do in this situation? Andy called out a great situation he mentioned here. Tampa's winning despite injuries. And let's go down the road a month from now or 6 weeks, and all of a sudden Tampa's healthier than they've been all season long. They're winning continually, but the number on their game is being priced accordingly. Are you going to continue to ride the Tampa Bay freight train at that point, or back down a little bit because the odds maker is asking you to pay a little higher tariff backing that team?
Mark, what I do is I try to find other ways to play the game because I don't like laying big points. And I know you don't either.
No.
If this game was like 4.5, it would be too high for a money line play, and I certainly wouldn't play it. But I would maybe look at some props. I may look at some wide receiver props, running back props, maybe quarterback props.
Team total.
And also the total. I play a lot of totals anyway. So, I mean, I have the basic total, which is over the 47, and I go from there and I look for props to make up the difference. But I won't chase a number. I don't like playing big favorites. There's too much. I don't know if it's called parity or just sloppiness or inefficiency in the NFL this year, but there's so many games that come down to the end. And we see it every week with these crazy endings. Tampa Bay is the chaser to come back and do what Baker does every week. But to be a big favorite, I probably couldn't do that.
So you haven't see. I stopped doing this a couple of years ago, and I was just taking a look at it right now while you guys were talking about it. And that is that I learned a few years ago that I never worried about a line unless it was 10, 12, double digits, because statistically speaking, the team that won the football game covered the game.
About 83 to 85% of the time.
There you
Whether
go.
it be the favorite winning and covering or the underdog pulling the upset.
Yeah. And I was just looking at it just while you guys were saying this. All 14 teams that won last week covered.
Yeah.
So that's why why is that why don't you feel that way, Jim or Mark? I mean, why has that been an issue as far as being afraid to give points at 7 or 6 when that's the case, statistically speaking?
Well, I don't think it is the case for every point spread. I think if you look at a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and you look at the statistics of what that team does.
Yeah, as opposed to an 8, 9, or a 10. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Are you talking about betting a money line?
No, just winning straight up and
winning the
covering.
game.
Yeah. If I were laying the points, I'm not going to cover and win if I'm laying 7, 8, 9, 10 as much as I do if I play 1, 2, or 3.
And we've been seeing the last couple of years, point spreads have been coming down. We don't see nearly as many favorites of more than 7 points. I don't know what the number is this year, but it's not very much. And by the way, one thing that you mentioned, Mark, when we talk about going forward and you're paying a tax to back Tampa Bay, say in November, because they keep winning, that would have to assume that Tampa Bay is able to win some games by margins. In other words, have a 10, 12, 14-point win a couple of times in there that justifies the line being raised. Because what will happen is, let's say they keep winning close games, and all of a sudden, you're laying 6 points with Tampa Bay, and they've only won, say, 2 of 9 wins by more than 6. You're going to see a lot of people instinctively taking a look because of the closeness. You'll see people you'll see the sharps jumping on Tampa Bay, given their propensity through that point of the season of not winning games by margins.
One last closing thought, Greg, on your question is this, as to that answer. You have to remember that every dog that won the game obviously covered the spread. So I think the more relevant question is how do favorites that win games do against the spread? That number won't be anywhere near 83 to 85%. Okay.
No, I think it's about 47 to 48%.
Yeah, the dog is where all the
favorites win and cover. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's the question you have to ask yourself.
So you're saying that that number is like that but you're saying as long as they still win, not if they get upset. You're saying if they win, it's less than 50% that they're covering the spread while they're winning.
Believe so. Yeah. In other words, let's break down the 83% that the points don't matter, because the other 17% is when the dog covers but loses the game. So let's say of the 83%, let's say it's 50-50 Okay, so that means about 41% of the time the favorite wins and covers, and 40% of the time, which may be a little bit high, the underdog wins outright. But let's say it's 40% for argument's sakes. That means that favorites would cover roughly about 56, 57% of the time, which is a bit too high. But it does. But remember, all that times when the line does not come, when the line does come into play, it's because the favorite wins, but the underdog covers or the game pushes.
One other quick note in passing, guys, before I go on to our next game here, and I mention this because there's a couple of games that do knock on this door. Favorites of 7.5, that number exactly. And the reason I'm mentioning is I'm in a lot of other contests outside of Las Vegas where you got to pick every game in every contest, and there's a lot of surprisingly 2 or 3 games that are the favorite is minus 7.5, and they happen to be on the road. 7.5 point favorites on the road in the National Football League are horrific. Okay, not bad, horrific. Okay, I'm going to throw a number, something to the effect of like 33 and 67. Okay.
Oh boy.
Wow.
Yeah. So you be careful of that. You've got Philadelphia playing tonight, laying that number, and I believe you got Denver laying a similar number against the Jets on Sunday. So,
Yeah.
Taking the Jets.
word of
Oh,
warning.
no.
Okay.
Well,
And look at
listen,
this. That means I got to take the Jets and the Ravens?
No,
in
the
same
Jet.
week?
Wait a
Well,
minute.
I want the London game. Maybe the London game may be a
that's-
little bit different because both teams
That's
are
a
road
neutral.
teams.
That's a neutral site.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
not
makes
a
more
road game,
sense. Yeah,
right,
but
yeah.
that means I got to take the Ravens against the Rams? Oh, no.
Well, Greg,
All right, I'm gonna stay away.
Now you'll
Well,
know
now, Mark, I assume you use closing numbers for this.
Yeah, so I use they're almost all exclusively closing numbers, right? Not
Yeah,
a number that
and
opens or
the Rams, so 7.5. The Rams could go up to 8. They could go down to
They
7.
could, right? But so that is why on
Okay.
Thursday's game tonight at 7.5.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even look at the Eagles in this football game. Now,
I
when the
would
game
in
goes
I would in the teaser with Denver.
Well, you're talking teaser now, Andy. You're not talking
Yeah.
7.5.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that's how you get around that.
Yeah, well, the line that I'm hitting. So
Yeah, my
just food for
Eagles
thought, guys.
contact actually picked, he said to take the Giants this week.
Says to take the Giants.
He says take the Giants and the under. He just thinks that the Eagles are a mess right now, and he just doesn't trust them to cover that much of a point spread. And keep in mind, Dickerson is out. Lane Johnson can't stay healthy. They're a big mess right now, the Eagles. So yeah, he actually says take the Eagles and the under. That's the way he's going.
If you can get the 7.
You mean the Giants in the under?
The Giants and the under, correct.
There are 7.5s out there, and there's one place right now that has 41, and that's a live number for the total.
That's a good number for the under.
I would look for 7.5, play the dog, and take the under 41. That would probably be a positive EV play.
Well, guys, let's keep this train on the track here and go to our next game that we've got on tap. Another great matchup. The Detroit Lions invading Kansas City to take on the struggling Chiefs. This is a really good marquee matchup. I think a lot of people at the beginning of the season might have bought this as a possible 2-team matchup in the Super Bowl. Jim, what do you think happens here between these two potential Super Bowl teams?
It's a very difficult game to handicap because I think that Detroit is actually a better team than Kansas City at this point. But this is a terrible spot. I mean, you got Kansas City coming off that last-minute loss. They're a good team at home. They're going to be – I mean, Detroit's going to be absolutely pumped as well. I mean, we know their coach. Across the board, this game has gone up in the total from 48.5 to 53. That's a 5-point move in a total. I mean, that's huge. And yet the point spread, one or up to 2.5 on Kansas City. When you have a total that big, I think you can just excuse the point spread and say it doesn't matter. It's just too many points involved in the game. If they're right about 53 points being scored, boy, I don't know. I'm really at a loss with this game.
Jim makes it a tough call.
I don't want to go over 53. I like the game over, but not 53. And I don't want to bet Kansas City coming off a loss in this situation, even though I think Detroit might be a better team.
Well, Andy, what do you think here? Good matchup, potential Super Bowl matchup.
I'm going to read
but maybe at the end.
I'm going to read a little bit of what I wrote this week because it's one of my writings. It says, It can certainly be argued that Detroit is the quote-unquote current best team in the NFL through 5 weeks following their opening loss at division rival Green Bay. Lions have gone 4-0 both straight up and against the spread. Their margins were 31 and 24 point wins at home, 8 and 13 on the road. But the thing that really says that Detroit is almost like the new Kansas City, but on steroids. Look at Dan Campbell's record. He took over in 2021. The team, his overall record straight up is 45-31-1. That includes his first year when he was 3-13-1. I think they started 0-10 that year. That means 2022 through now, his teams are 42-18, 42-18 again, straight up. That's remarkable in the NFL. His point spread record is even better because he had a very good point spread record in his first season. Including this year, 53-22-2 against the spread. Wow. In 3.5 seasons, basically. It's almost you can always take into account injury things. Detroit's almost an automatic underplay, especially on the road and especially as an underdog. I think right now. Now, I did mention at the start I had something to say about those close games. Kansas City Chiefs were 15-2 last year. Now, remember, my definition of close game is based on final score, not necessarily how it got there, but final score. I mentioned that I take a look at what would have happened if games decided by 3 points or less were wins by 3 points or less, and if an overtime game that was decided by 6 was also reversed because it was an overtime game. Kansas City played 6 such games last year. They were 6-0, meaning that they were not that far away of those results from being a 9-8 team because they won all those. They were very fortunate. I think they set the record with like 13 or 14 consecutive wins in one-score games.
Right.
Yeah, so that's so close. Now take a look this year. They're 2-3. The first game was the Charger game where they lost by 6. Their other 2 losses, exactly 3 points. Their 2 wins have been by more. So we're starting to see, and maybe it's just a coincidence because it's a small sample size, but the games they won by close margins last year, they've lost those close games this year through 5 weeks. I just think right now this is, and by the way, when you win all those close games, to me it signals the start of a decline because we're used to winning. We're used to winning games. In fact, you have this in the playbook preview. In 2021, the Chiefs averaged 30 points per game. In 2022, they averaged 29 points per game. The last 2 years, it dropped all the way down to 22 and 23 points per game. That's a huge drop-off. That's like a 25% drop-off from the 2021 and 2022 seasons. And that decline that we saw because of the close games is now, at least through the 5 weeks, we're seeing because the 3 close games they've played this year have all been losses. I think Detroit is the better team. Yes, it is a tough situation that the Lions are in, but they're thinking, number 1 seed. They're looking that they control everything right now. And Kansas City's just can Kansas City win this game? Yeah, sure they can. But I don't expect it to be easy. I'm going to wait and see if this line can go up to 3. I actually think it'll probably come down. But if it does go up to 3, I'll definitely be on the Lions. And even if it stays at 2, 2.5, that'll be a money line play for me.
Well, the point you make in the game, Andy, which I think is relevant here, is the fact that nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs on that 15-game win streak and one-score games. They're 0-3 this year in their 3 one-score games.
Wow.
So they're beginning to come back or level back.
You're both basically saying that Kansas City's living on their reputation.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And what's ironic is the Kansas City Chiefs football teams of Andy Reid in the past that did so well and made the playoffs in the Super Bowl, they did so with spotty statistical records. They were getting outstatted more often than they weren't. This year, Kansas City's playing terrifically in the stats. They've won the stats their last 4 football games in a row. The thing that jumps out to me that I've got a problem back in Kansas City in this game are 2 things. Number 1, in Detroit, you do have the underdog that has the better offense and the better defense, which concerns me. And number 2, it goes back to the point of Dan Campbell, which Andy alluded to. All those great numbers that he has against the spread since being a head coach in the NFL, they're even better on the road. That's really where he's won the bulk of his money. So do I want to go out and lay points into a team in the National Football League that with the coach that has the best road record in the National Football League, has the better offense and the better defense against a team that's swirling in one-score games? No, I don't. I'll play Detroit if I play this game and grab the points. Greg, what do you think about this game?
Before I give you my input, I'm going to move this over here. And I'm going to, I have to make sure I get the sound in first. Okay. This is a video that Mark did. This before the season.
Everybody, this is Marc Lawrence for the Playbook Experts YouTube channel with insight into this upcoming football season. And we all know about Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs and the dynamic job Andy Reid has done with them. But lo and behold, beware of this football season. I'm going to warn you. I call this segment Lay Down Andy. And take a look at what I've got here on tap for you. From my Substack Bet You Didn't Know page, I'm going to share this with you. Super Bowl losing teams are just 17-28 against the spread in season opening games. That's not good. Also 6-12 to the spread in those same games if they're facing a division opponent like the LA Chargers. And also these defending Super Bowl losers have stumbled backwards 2.5 losses an average per season the next season, with the black eye from losing the Super Bowl. Andy Reid's teams, how about a combined 5-15 to the spread in the first 10 games following his 2 previous Super Bowl losses? He's been the epitome of what I call lay down Sally after Super Bowl letdowns. We call this lay down Andy. And get this, Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes is often referred to as the best quarterback in the NFL, and he has been. I don't know if he still is, but check this out. I was rather stunned to see this. Over the last 2 seasons, Baker Mayfield has better stats than Patrick Mahomes, including, how about passing yards? Baker Mayfield, 85-44 to 81-11. How about passing touchdowns? Baker, 59, Mahomes, 53. How about completion percentage? Baker, 67.9, Mahomes, 67.3. How about passer rating? Baker, 100.7, Mahomes, 93.0. Interceptions, Baker 26, Mahomes 25. And division titles, how about 2 for Baker and 2 for Mahomes? Don't discount Baker Mayfield here. He's an under-the-radar quarterback that's really cooking right now. And if he steps up as an underdog this year, I'll look to play on him, and I'll also look to fade Kansas City more often than not this football season. Well, that was a great segue, Greg.
Yes.
I got to tell you, that was perfect timing to insert about our conversation between these 2 teams, Kansas City and Tampa Bay, that we talked about. And it goes to what Jim Feist said at the beginning of the season. He wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay doesn't win the Super Bowl, get there and win the Super Bowl, because Baker Mayfield just did not get the credit he deserved. He's starting to get it this year, but to show you how good he is, he's outshined Patrick Mahomes here.
Oh, trust me, the clip of Jim making his selection on Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, that will be coming at some point. I'll have that ready for everybody.
Cool.
Don't want to get rid of it too early in the season, though. So, because we're going to milk this Baker Mayfield thing all season, because this is going to be all season.
And
so
by the way,
jump the gun on that one.
You made a comment before about their 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. How about those odds are probably about half of that to win the NFC? You know, Tampa Bay is in position to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. Why? Because in the NFC East, you've got Philadelphia and Washington. In the NFC North, you've got Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. In the NFC West, you have the Rams, you have the 49ers, and let's throw Seattle in there as well. In the NFC South, you've got Tampa Bay, and then how much of a drop-off is there to Atlanta, and then further beyond that to the Panthers and the Saints. So basically, Tampa Bay is playing in a division where they could, I'll say, let's say 5-1, maybe even 6-0 in the division, and that could be the difference between a number 1 seed and perhaps a 2, 3, or 4.
Now, speaking about the Bucks, they are going to be at this opponent, the Detroit Lions, on Monday Night Football next week.
Oh boy.
So that'll be a huge contest. The thing I am worried about in this
By
one,
the way, could that be a look ahead this week against the 49ers, especially coming off their recent success?
not with their opponents. These are 2 really good opponents.
I don't think it's a look ahead for either team. They're going to look at
No.
Yeah.
So, especially it's a Sunday night game for the Detroit Lions point of view, national TV. The thing I'm worried about with Detroit, even though I'm still going to take Detroit because, as Andy
One point
said,
of Tampa Bay.
Well, I was talking about Detroit, Kansas City. So in this matchup, I'm going to be I'm still going to take Detroit, because not only the other thing that Andy, another stat to add on to Andy's, Detroit under Dan Campbell is 21-4 against the spread on the road. So his numbers are just,
Bingo.
it's It's either you don't take the Lions or you take the Lions. You just I don't know how you could bet against them. So if you don't want to take this game, I get it, because the thing that does concern me are the injuries. Kansas City now, without Rashee Rice, everybody else is healthy. So, it's back to Kansas City being a healthy team again, and everybody else is dealing with injuries. But keep in mind that they are playing better every week. This is not a surprise. The Chiefs every week has outgained their previous week's numbers, and that's because they're getting healthier and healthier and healthier. The Lions, unfortunately, will be without 2 starting cornerbacks in this game. So no Arnold, no Reed. Brown's dealing with an injury. Not sure if he's going to play, but he did not practice on Wednesday. Kirby Joseph, their star safety, did not practice on Wednesday. So there's a lot. They may get Aleem McNeil back, and that would be huge for them. But it's going to take him a while to get back to his, all-pro status. But the bottom line is that's the thing that I'm just the only thing that I am most concerned with taking Detroit are the injuries, because they have a lot of them.
What about the dual running back tandem of Montgomery and Gibbs?
They're healthy.
How much of an advantage, and how much of an advantage that is, because basically, especially as the season wears on, when you've got a team like with the Barkley and you've got one featured back, that takes a toll. If you've got 2 backs who are somewhat, not to say clones of each other, but they both can shoulder similar loads, that bodes well for a team like Detroit down the stretch. Again, injuries notwithstanding.
Okay, guys, let's wrap this whole segment up here. I know Jim's got to be on the run, but we want to get his opinion on what we call our featured NFL game this particular week. It's going to happen Monday night when the Buffalo Bills journey into Atlanta to take on the Falcons. A lot of people have Buffalo in the Super Bowl already. I myself have the Atlanta Falcons making the playoffs, and who knows what happens if you make the playoffs. You can make the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens. Jim, what do you like in this game, Buffalo, Atlanta, in this football contest?
I think Buffalo has some holes on defense, and I think it's going to show up eventually, and maybe it has already started. Atlanta's a young team, young quarterback. I think Atlanta is a really good spot here as a home dog. And a lot of people I talk to love the over in this game as well. It's a big number. It's at 49.5 up to 50 in a lot of spots. So it is a big number. But I definitely like the Falcons.
I agree with you on that as well. Greg DePalma, who are you looking at in this particular Monday Night Football matchup?
Well, remember last week, there was a lot of talk about Oliver and Milano returning, and that was going to be a big deal for the Bills on defense. Well, Milano returned. Unfortunately, he re-aggravated his injury. So now he's week to week. Oliver did not return. And I thought, and I don't know what you guys think about the loss to the Patriots. And the reason why I wasn't really overly surprised is that we see this a lot in college, where you get these teams like, I know there's some teams this week that are playing Nebraska. They're playing their first true road game of the season. And there's a lot of teams that get all those home games, and that when you get to that 3rd in a row, that 4th in a row, where Buffalo, remember, they hadn't left the state until this week. So I think once correct me if I'm wrong, but when you get to that 4th and 5th, it's almost, you get a little complacent because there's no adversity. There's no road here, travel there. And I think that might have caught up to Buffalo last week against the Patriots, including some of those injuries. But now they're on the road. Now they faced a little adversity. I'm still a little bit concerned. No Oliver, no Milano. I think that definitely hurts their defense against Atlanta. They've got a good running back, maybe one of the best in the league. But I'm going to stick with Buffalo just because Atlanta is just one of these teams you just can't take. I mean, I either stay away from Falcon games or I take the opposition because they're just not a good spread team. They're 4-9 against the spread as a home dog, 0-1 on that spot this year. And I just think the Bills coming off a loss are probably the better play. It's very rare to see a team like the Bills lose 2 straight.
Andy, what do you feel this Monday Night Football matchup? 2 potential playoff teams for sure?
Losing 2 straight. Interestingly enough, that was one of the things I want to take a look at. The Bills, at about the same time last year, did lose back-to-back games. They were both on the road, and actually even the year before, they lost back-to-back games. I think later in the season, one at home and one on the road. I want to say Cincinnati and Denver may have been involved in 2023. But I do agree with Greg on Buffalo here. It's a little bit of a test to see how they respond after really facing their first adversity of the season, falling out of the ranks of the unbeaten and losing to a division rival, which certainly can't help. So they really can't afford to take things easy against an Atlanta team that is still, Atlanta has been, normally, and we've talked about it before, how often we are a week early in backing a team about to go on a run, or a season early before backing a team that'll become a playoff team after years of a drought. Atlanta's been that team in the NFL for the last 3 or 4 years. Every year they've been expected to show great improvement and make the playoffs, and they have yet to prove it, so they still have to prove it to me. And I think based on the effort last week, I still need to see Atlanta prove it to me. Don't know if it'll be a play. It'll probably be a very light play, but I'll be going with Buffalo Monday night.
I'm going to be with the Atlanta Falcons in this game, guys, not just because I'm insistent that Atlanta's going to be a good team and a surprise team in the NFL. They're proving it. You take a look at what their body of work is this season here. They're winning games by an average of 119 net yards per game. That's better than Buffalo, by the way, what the Atlanta Falcons are doing so far this football season here. And I'm with Jim. I'm concerned about this Buffalo defense here. It's you cannot continue to outscore opponents and keep winning football games, especially covering football games in that same aspect. But what's really neat in the game here, it's from our Playbook football newsletter this week, and I'm going to share it with our listeners out there. It's our awesome angle of the week, in fact. And this works against the Buffalo Bills this week, and I call it "Darlin' Be Home Soon." And I'm a big fan of music, as you guys well know. So what we're looking to do here against Buffalo is they've been camped at home 3 games in a row, as Greg alluded to. This is their first game outside the state because they're coming off of 3 home games in a row, and the only other game was in New York against the Jets. But the role that Buffalo finds themselves this week is NFL non-division road favorites of 3 or more points coming off 3 consecutive home games in a row. If those teams were popular teams last year and won 11 or more games, they are 4-20 against the spread.
Wow.
That's the role for the Buffalo Bills this particular week. Darlin' be home soon. I think they better get their rear end at home. I think they'll feel that way after they play Atlanta on Monday night. I think the Falcons pull the rug out on the Bills again.
All right.
Well,
that's
okay,
our
guys.
NFL.
So that's going to do our NFL segment here. I want to thank Jim Feist for so bravely stepping up to the mic and filling in here. His insight is always terrific, and we really, really appreciate hearing what Jim has to say on the card each and every week. Jim, get that throat fixed up here. I know I don't know what medicines you can take to get that, but I know you didn't sound like Jim Feist of all, but the words you had to say were Jim Feist words, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, guys,
better,
that was
Jim.
Jim Feist joining us for our NFL segment portion of the show this week. Let's turn things around to the opposite side of the football field and head over to the college football scene. And we're going to take a look at what we see on the college football card this week. Before we do that, Andy, anything that in college football you've seen this season, maybe any team in particular or any thought in mind that we should keep an eye on moving forward here? Because we're getting some controversial games. Some teams are stepping up and some are going backwards. What's your thought on what we've seen so far in college football?
Well, I think we just saw the where did that come from game of the year last week with UCLA's wire-to-wire win over Penn State, which I won't say all but eliminated Penn State from talk of being in the college football playoff, but that would probably mean that Penn State would have to at least reach, if not win, the Big Ten championship. And of course, right now you've got unbeaten Oregon, unbeaten Indiana, unbeaten Ohio State ahead of them. So that could make things very difficult for the Nittany Lions to make a return to the college football playoffs. Alabama,
Well, they'd have to run the table, which again, the way they're playing is not likely. But yeah, if they run the table, even if they didn't get to the Big Ten championship game, they'd be in the playoffs.
It would depend what happens with the again, it depends what happens with the top 3 teams. They could all be in there, and then it's a question of, does the Big Ten get 4 teams in, or does the SEC get 4 teams in? And that might be it. But
because they're going to play Ohio State and Indiana. That's why I said that, because if they're going to beat Indiana and Ohio State,
then they're in. If they don't fall elsewhere, yeah, absolutely.
But the question is are they good enough to do that? That's the question.
That's Big James is now being known as Little James because he can lose big games and little games when he shouldn't. I mean, 24.5-point favorite, even on the road. There's no excuse for losing that game and losing the way they did. Trailing wire to wire. So that's one of the things. I'm curious about Alabama, who now is, they face a tough test this week at Missouri. They're back now in the talk for the championship following their. First of all, they got that nice revenge against Vanderbilt last week. Thank you for that late touchdown to cover the spread. And then, of course, the week before winning that game against Georgia. So they've put themselves very much in the national championship situation, despite their opening week loss to Florida State. So I think Alabama's a team to keep an eye on, though. I don't know how good they are compared to last year's, but certainly Caleb DeBoer did pass a big test last week with that game against Vanderbilt, which was the team that I think gave him his first loss at Bama last year, that coming after that the Georgia win. So I think Alabama's a team to keep an eye on. Two teams as far as the group of five go, okay? AAC is looking very good, with teams like Tulane, Memphis, and North Texas, who right now is one of the remaining unbeaten teams. I think they're 5-0. Memphis, I think, is the best team in that conference. North Texas plays, I think it's tomorrow night, Friday night, I believe.
They play the real best team in the AAC.
Yes, South Florida. Yeah, if indeed they are, which you can make a case, because I do have that. They do have that win over Florida, and of course we saw. I had Florida last week against Texas, both money line and plus the points. That bye week did a lot, and we know the talent on that team. But another team to keep an eye on is our home team here in Vegas, UNLV, 5-0. Boys, they do play Boise later, in a few weeks. That'll be
next
a key
week.
game. Yeah, and Boise already has the two losses. They have that loss to South Florida, which, by the way, is a reason why South Florida is a contender, because even with that loss to Miami, they have that win over Florida and Boise State to open the season when Boise was ranked. And then, of course, you've got, as I say, UNLV has a favorable schedule. I don't know who they would put. They have a chance to win the conference. They could end up running the table and perhaps face Boise or maybe some other team for a third straight year in the Mountain West. Boy, UNLV's had some great success hiring SEC coaches. Barry Odom just came off the two best back-to-back years in program history, goes to Purdue, and Dan Mullen, who also a former SEC coach, is off to a great start with this year's team. So I'll be interested to see who makes the you're showing right now the group 10.
These are our.
Oh, those are yours? Okay.
Yes, group of 5, top 10.
Yeah, UNLV might be a little bit lower rated there. North Texas might be a little bit lower rated there as well. What's the number in parentheses? Last week?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. San Diego State, I don't know about San Diego State, but they're certainly UNLV. And ODU is also a nice surprise. Who is it that I think Indiana beat ODU 27-14 in week 1, and we said, big deal. The way ODU has played, I don't think they've lost since.
Next week, James Madison versus ODU.
Yeah, but I wanted to point out,
huge.
Indiana, that win over ODU, which was sort of like a win, now looks much better in retrospect.
Yeah, they held ODU to their season low yards in that game as well.
Yeah.
Andy. Yes.
Yeah.
So at least all these teams are playing each other. Again, James Madison against Old Dominion next week. Yeah. South Florida, Memphis, Tulane, they're going to play each other. North Texas this week plays South Florida. So,
UNLV, Boise.
Yeah. So we're going to find out an awful lot. But the thing is out of these teams, the reason I still have USF 1 is because what I think the committee is going to be thinking about as well is, all right, obviously it'll take care of itself because the winner of the AAC will more than likely to go up against the winner of the Sun Belt, as long as, say, the winner of the Sun Belt runs the table. So let's say it's one of those teams, the 4 and 5, and one of the top 3, and they wind up not beating each other up and have decent records. Because if they beat each other up and they have 3 losses or something like that, then maybe the Sun Belt team winds up getting in. But the thing that I hope the committee takes into account,
or UNLV because of their favorable schedule.
That could happen too. So,
if they beat Boise. Yes.
Yes. They're going to have to say to themselves, can one of these teams represent in the playoffs? They don't want to be picking one of these teams to go to the playoffs and then get destroyed, because they're not capable. But the good thing is a lot of these teams have played teams, and at least at Memphis, they've beaten Arkansas. So
That's
Florida,
what I was going to just point out. Yeah.
Tulane has a problem because they got blasted.
Ole Miss.
Yes. And if you look at Tulane the last few seasons, every time they play an SEC team, which is very tough, they get blasted. So they don't have a good resume going up against those types of teams. James Madison had a nice loss at Louisville. That was a 4-quarter game. And even the Old Dominion game you guys talked about, that was a good loss at Indiana. They didn't get
very good loss out on the road.
So
do you know why Tulane gets blasted every time they play SEC teams, Greg?
Yeah, well, pretty much, but why?
Because they're upper echelon group of 5, and they catch the attention of those SEC teams.
Yeah.
They get a lot of the SEC leftovers from a recruiting standpoint. The ones that Ole Miss doesn't take, that LSU doesn't take. So they have like second or third tier SEC athletes, which is good against teams within their conference, but not necessarily good when they go up against the SEC teams that have the 1 and 2 tier players.
Yeah, they just need to schedule more of the Arkansas and Mississippi States from now on. It'll, win those games first before you start getting blown out by the top teams in the SEC.
Guys, before we get to our games here, let me make this one comment before we move on here. I think the team we're going to learn the most about this week in college football is going to be Alabama. They got up to that rocky start against Florida State in the football contest. They have held 4 opponents to season-low yards defensively. They're playing like the Nick Saban defensive football teams of old, which is really good for Alabama. The problem I have here, though, is they're coming off of a big, huge revenge win over Vanderbilt in a game that they laid a Penn State egg. We can call it that now, a Penn State leg against Vanderbilt the previous year. And they've got another big revenge game on deck next week against Tennessee. And what do they happen to be doing this week? They're going to travel to Missouri, who's just been camped at home all season long. This is their 6th straight home game in a row for Missouri. And they're chomping at the bit, I'm sure, to get a taste of Alabama. So we're going to find out about Alabama this week. If they get in and out of Columbia alive and with the money, I'll be very impressed. If they don't, to me, it'll be just another forewarned sign for Alabama.
By the way, Mark, looking ahead, assume you're correct and Missouri beats Alabama. Does that mean next week when they're at Auburn, Missouri will Auburn be a 3, 4, or 5-star pick in the newsletter? Going against Missouri off the Alabama win and playing their first road game more than halfway into the season.
And the fact that Auburn will have revenge in the game, too. Those are all a lot of nice ingredients. That makes for a nice salad. You know what I mean?
It'll probably be a very competitively priced game, too.
Yes.
Keep in mind, Missouri has never beaten Alabama at home. And if Alabama beats Missouri, it'll be the 2nd straight week that they'll beat a 5-0 dog, which is kind of hard to do.
Yes,
as you know, Mark, 5-0 dogs are awfully nice.
Yes, they sure are.
For Bama to beat back-to-back 5-0 dogs, even though their cover last week, as we know, was pretty lame. Okay, that was a lame cover, but it's a cover nonetheless, and the statistics will show that. So we'll see if they can do it a 2nd week in a row.
Well, let's take a look at this week's card, guys. We've got 2 featured games, and then we're going to do our marquee game. And I think we've got a really nice-looking college football card on tap this week. First game we're going to look at on the college football card this week. Let's take a look. Let me see if I've got right here in front of me. Greg, do you have it? Oh, there we go. Michigan at Southern Cal. A Big Ten matchup, normally a Rose Bowl contest, Pac-12 Big Ten matchup, but it's not that anymore any longer. I got to ask you, Andy, is this Southern Cal team for real this year, or has Michigan come alive this year? Not what a lot was expected from the Wolves, but they seem to be overplaying themselves a little bit this year. What do you think happens here between the Wolverines and the Trojans?
Well, Lincoln Riley has not, I think, lived up to the hype that accompanied him to Southern California when he bolted Oklahoma a few years ago. He's had a very good record. I think now he's like 30-15 straight up, so it's not as though he's failed. He's won 2 out of every 3, but I think they expected more like 3 out of every 4 from him. I do like this team. They got off to some nice, easy wins. Then they had, of course, that game. Now, they ended up losing very late at Illinois. I remember I had Illinois in that game, both straight up and plus the points. But Illinois was in control of that game, and SC came back to ultimately take a late lead before losing 34-32 on a field goal. So it's a loss, but it's a loss that did show some resiliency the way SC came back on the road. Now they get Michigan at home, and I believe, and I think you pointed out in your newsletter that they played last year, and I'm trying right now to just take a look to see. I think it was a 3-point win by 3, and I'm trying to think who had the better stats, and I believe USC had the better stats in this game by about 50 yards or so. So they did do well. They held their own. And remember, Michigan was coming off the national championship game with the great defense and everything. I think it's an interesting matchup this week because you've got a very, very solid SC offense against a very, very strong Michigan defense. Despite my comments about Lincoln Riley and his failure to live up to perhaps, and maybe it was a little bit too much high expectations because the recruiting at SC, even though it's normally like Michigan, top 20, had not been all that good a couple of years before Riley got there. I still think he's the better coach than Moore of Michigan State. I like USC. I laid 2.5 with them early in the week. It opened 3. It went down to 2.5. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to 3. I'm trying to remember what I had as far as the schedule dynamics go in this game. I do believe SC plays Notre Dame next week, and I forget who Michigan State plays, but I know in 2 weeks they play who Michigan plays. I think Michigan State and I forget who they play next week. I think it's
Washington before Michigan.
Washington,
State.
Yeah, another quality team that showed its resiliency last week. Or maybe Maryland shows its true colors when Washington goes on the road. Maryland was a very popular pick, both straight up and ended up certainly taking the points, and they were leading the whole game. And Washington came back, and Maryland ended up covering because they were getting 5.5, but that was a game they should have won. So Michigan has a couple of tough games on tap, and of course they did play last year, so it's not the first time that they will have met since that championship game 2 years ago. I do like SC in this game playing at home. I think it is an important game for Lincoln Riley, and I think it could serve as a springboard. And the interesting thing is that because next week is Notre Dame and it's a non-conference game, that could be a nice edge for Notre Dame if they get SC coming off a win this week.
I agree with you. I think this is a big game for Southern Cal. Lincoln Riley's done most of his damage at home when teams go into his home turf. Coming into this particular contest, and they fell prey last week to being a 5-0 Fat Cat favorite, did Southern Cal. They laid 6.5 at Illinois, which I think was the queerest line of the year. Not that the game was over and it played out and so forth or whatnot, but I think the zigzag line on Illinois was probably the worst lines made this college football season when you're looking at two quality football teams.
By the way, just along that line, Mark, I know about the 5-0 Fat Cats. What is a 6-0, whatever they call it? What is their record if they pass that 5-0 test? And again, I'm talking straight up now in this situation.
All I can tell you, this is Andy. Every college football underdog who is 6-0 or better is a strong positive point spread play. It's the revenge chip on their shoulder attitude that they take into the football games, and they're even better when they hook up against other undefeated teams. Right. But let me get back to the worst lines that we've seen in college football this year. I'm going to go back to the Illinois football game against Indiana when Illinois was a 7-point dog at Indiana, and they get clobbered. And what do? They come home the next week and dress up as a 6.5-point dog to Southern Cal. Andy, what am I missing here? What was wrong with that line? How'd they go from a 7 dog at Indiana to a 6.5?
When was the Iowa game? Did Indiana play Iowa between SC and Indiana?
No.
Between SC and
it was just Illinois
Iowa
at Indiana as a 7 dog, and then next week Illinois at home against Southern Cal as a 6.5 dog.
Okay, we're talking Illinois. I was thinking Indiana there. Again, reputation I think had a lot to do with it.
Well, I think getting blown out had a lot to do with
it. Yeah, Illinois getting blown out. It was a week before I think when Illinois got blown out by Indiana.
Which was really strange. And again, we talked about it. It's just, college kids, they get blown out. They don't care. It's the next week. It's on the next game. It's not like we all knew Illinois was a solid team. We knew it all year. Yeah. And even this week, they're 5-1. They're 4-1, I think, against the spread. And they're getting almost 16 against Ohio State. So I'm still wondering why they're being kind of, and I get it. It's Ohio State. I do. But I just don't think they're getting any respect, Illinois. I don't know why.
No, I don't think they are either. And a lot of it's because of one bad game. And if you can, I was often told that if you can look at every team's body of work and take their best game and their worst games out of their body of work, and then
You
look
see
at
their
everything
true
else
team.
in between, that's who the team really is.
Yep.
Right. So, Greg, which side of this football game are you going to get to?
Well, I actually thought that this game was going to be Michigan too. So I'm taking Michigan, and it's really more of tradition, history. Michigan knows how to win these games. Even this recent group knows how to win these games. Lincoln Riley does not. And that's really what it all is. I do believe, and unfortunately, USC has to play Notre Dame next week. I mean, I don't know where they came up with the schedule. I don't think they, of course, had a hand in it. But for them to have to take on Michigan and Notre Dame in back-to-back weeks is really killer for them, because I would have liked to have seen USC, if they win this game, get some momentum. And I just don't see them beating Michigan and Notre Dame back-to-back. I just don't see it, because I was going to say, well, if USC wins this game, it'd be kind of nice to see, could they be a nice little dark horse? At least the Notre Dame game is a non-conference game, so they got that going for them. But I also think this is going to be a big one for Michigan and their chances. What happened was, when Sharon Moore was suspended for 2 games, when he was away from the play calling of the offense actually took off. It was no more, we're just going to play, because Sharon Moore is a more of a traditional old school, like Jim Harbaugh. He wants to run the ball and he wants to win on defense, all that kind of stuff. When he wasn't around, they opened things up. They trusted the true freshman quarterback Underwood, and they passed the ball more, and they were a more potent team. They beat Nebraska when nobody really thought that they probably would win that game. And so the question is will they do that now when Sharon Moore's back on the sidelines? Because last week's offense, it took them a half before they started to open things up again. So I think if they can just open things up and give Underwood an opportunity to be a little bit more of the player that I think that he can be, and they have a really good running. Both teams have really good running backs, by the way. USC does as well. I think that'll serve Michigan really well. And the one thing that I do think that they did exceptionally this is again because he's an offensive line guy. He understood after they got manhandled in the Oklahoma game at the line of scrimmage that our offensive line, which is a lot of new guys, was not going to match up and play the physical, old school Michigan way. So he changed the scheme right after that game and said, well, from now on, we're going to play more of a zone scheme. We're going to use our strengths of this particular offensive line, their athleticism. And since then, it's worked very well for them. So again, that's what I mean. Coaching, very important. And I think Michigan wins a really close game. And if they do win this game, then I think you better watch out because they could get on a roll.
One thing I think also, I don't know that any of us mentioned it. I don't know if you did, Mark. USC is coming off of a bye week. Michigan played Wisconsin last week after their bye week.
Yeah, good point, Andy. They are. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but was Sharon Moore suspended in games 3 and 4? Or 3 and 4 this season? He coached the first 2 games, and he had to sit out the next 2. Is that the sequence?
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, looking at Sharon Moore and what he's done this year, the 3 games that he's been on the sidelines with the Trojans, he's not cashed a ticket yet. He's 0-3 to the money. And I think there's a huge coaching edge here to Lincoln Riley and the Trojans in this particular football contest here. And you got a little bit of revenge on tap for Southern Cal here. Put me down for
Did he coach against in the Nebraska game?
No.
Okay, that's the one.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the one where they, where they did cover a small number.
Yeah, their offense broke out. Yeah. So.
All right, guys, let's go over to the Southeast Conference. Seems like all of our big games that we're featuring on our podcast here this football season are obviously the Power 4 conferences, and they almost always come out of the Big Ten and the Southeast Conference. The Southeast Conference this week finds Georgia going to Auburn, I think, in a pretty good football matchup we've got on tap this week. Andy, what do you think happens? Bulldogs, Tigers this week?
I'm still not overly impressed with Auburn. I expected more out of this team, certainly offensively this year. Defensively, they've been fine. Georgia is Georgia. They're not at the level that they've been the last few years. The defense is still solid. The offense has nothing to get excited about. And they showed that. Although, again, another team that was resilient in the game against Alabama, that big game that is almost, whenever they play in the regular season, that's almost the big game in the SEC that season. They fell behind early and they came back and rallied to make it at least a competitive game throughout the second half. There aren't many teams that I feel comfortable laying numbers, but if they're reasonable enough and in certain situations like under a touchdown, I'm probably going against the grain. Not sure that I'm going to play the game, although I am considering it, depending upon if we do see some late money come in on Auburn to make the number a little bit cheaper than where it is now. So I'm going to go. I'm going with Georgia, but it's not a super strong play, but it is one that I feel comfortable enough about to consider making a play on.
Andy, refresh my memory. Georgia at Kentucky, that football game last week. What did Georgia do to the spread in that game?
Very close to a push. I was 35-14, and I think if I recall correctly, Kentucky got the last touchdown very late in the game, because that line was it closed anywhere depending upon the book, 20.5, 21, 21.5.
Which means that we can make an argument and say that Georgia has not cashed a ticket against an FBS football team this year, and that being the case. So
that's possibly, even if you can conclude it as a push. And actually, I think I even saw maybe briefly before, within the hour before, I think I maybe even seen a 22 up there.
So Greg,
I think it all depends, because where I did get a somewhere where it had 20. So it really is going to be all depending on where you because they did, again, they pushed the Tennessee game, as we know, and they came again. So yeah, you could have cashed in, or maybe you didn't. So, but you're right, Mark, it's possible
when you did your shopping, right? Yeah, exactly. So what do you think happens here, Greg? This SEC showdown, is Auburn live?
What's that?
Not? Go ahead.
I'm going to take Georgia just because, again, I'll say the same thing in a way I said with Michigan USC. I'm going to go with recent tradition. I'm going to go with Georgia. They've beaten Auburn 8 straight times. They've covered 6 out of 8. That included a playoff win, an SEC championship win back in 2017. I think this is a bad matchup for Auburn. In order to take advantage of Georgia's shoddy defense this year, you have to have a passing offense. Georgia's been okay against the run, and Auburn only runs the ball. They can't throw the ball. We saw that in the game against Texas A&M. Arnold had that receiver, Coleman, who is a really good receiver, by the way. He'll be good at the next level. He just isn't going to be good in college because he's had terrible quarterbacks to throw the ball to him. He could have had 2 touchdowns against Texas A&M. Arnold couldn't get him the ball. So I think he can't take advantage of that. That's a problem for Auburn, obviously. It's a very small spread. Keep in mind, though, that Georgia is only 4-8-1 against the spread as a road favorite over the last 13 games, including their push in the game. And again, depending on how you want to look at what happened in the Kentucky game, that could have been actually even worse than 4-8-1. So yeah, and believe it or not, this is the SEC home opener for Auburn. So they're finally getting an SEC home opener. They're coming off a bye. So they do have a few advantages, and this is also a game that Hugh Freeze really, really does need. I don't think he's going to get fired. I think Auburn will find a way to go to a bowl this year, but they're just not at that level. Even though Jackson Arnold is a definite improvement at quarterback from what they had, it just shows you how bad the quarterback situation was before Arnold, because Arnold is a one-dimensional player.
Mark, I have a question. I have a question for you, Mark. Your database goes back, I think to 1980?
Yes, it does.
What do you have a single source that you normally use for closing lines, or is it a composite of major books? Or
well, we had used Don Best for the longest time. We may be switching over to Odds Logic here shortly.
Well, Don Best, but I mean they have lines for many, many different books. Are there any specific books that you have used over the years?
Well, most recently here, Circa, because we respect them. Circa. We respect.
The reason I mentioned that because my database goes back to 1988, and when I started keeping the detailed numbers that I do now, and I have ever since, I used the Stardust, because that was like we didn't have offshore wagering at that point. We didn't have internet at that time, and they were the widely respected king of the sports books in Vegas. They closed in 2006, so I went to what was then the what was considered at that time the biggest sports book in Vegas, even though there were offshore books, and that was at the Hilton, which is now the Westgate. And I've been using that for now ever since then. And I just wanted to remark that I did have that marked down last week at the Westgate's closing number. Georgia did close a 20-point favorite, so my database does actually have them having that first cover. But if you want to take a look at the composite numbers across, if you use composite lines for that game last week, you probably should mark it a push.
I think so too.
Another thing to keep in mind, Auburn has been outgained in 3 of their 4 FBS matchups, and the only game that they outgained their opponent was South Alabama, outgaining the Sun Belt team by less than 30 yards.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Well, guys, I'm going to dress up with the Auburn Tigers in this game here as well. I think something's missing at Georgia, and I don't know if it's because of all the NIL stuff, paying players, and all those good things or ugly things that are going on in the world of college football. But Kirby Smart does not hold the recruiting edge that he had dominance in the previous 5 or 10 years. And I begin to think it's slowly showing in this football program here, at least maybe if for no other reason from a defensive aspect. But what I really like to Auburn in this game is how well Southeast Conference dogs out of this powerful conference are doing. And you take a look at Southeast Conference dogs, home dogs this season. There have been 6 of them. They've cashed 5 times, and 5-0 perfect against 750 or better opponents. That's the role Georgia will be in, a Southeast Conference dog who is on a nice major winning run this football season here. Put me down for the Tigers in this football game. Okay, guys, let's move on to our next game here. And Andy, have you got that in front of you, our menu for today's games there? I've lost my sheet.
Oh, the next game is the Indiana-Oregon game.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Really big football game here. Indiana.
And by
really,
this is the one that you labeled as game of the week.
Okay.
It was the last one we're talking about. Yeah.
The last game we're talking about then.
Correct.
Okay.
5-0 Fat Cat against 5-0 Fat Cat. Or actually, you got a dog.
One of them's got to be the dog, right?
Yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
And that's kind of
not that that's been working this year. The trends have definitely been volatile this year. So because of all the volatility in college football this year.
NIL.
So what do you like here, Greg? The 5-0 Fat Cat or the 5-0 dog?
I'm actually gonna take the 5-0 Fat Cat. Normally I'd be all over that dog, but Vandy proved last week that I guess that doesn't always have to happen. So, I just think that this is a major step up for Indiana. They've stepped up twice under Cignetti, twice on the road against big-time competition, and they've lost both games straight up and against the spread.
Are you saying he's a James Franklin coach, kind of a coach?
I don't know, but
not yet. Too small of a sample.
Yeah,
and you're talking about on the road, which of course
okay.
this game is. But and were those 2 last year? And did you include the
Yes.
Notre Dame game in the neutral site? Was that that was at Notre Dame?
That was a road game. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that was the one, and then the Ohio State game last year.
Yeah.
So look, I think they're a better team this year potentially, only for one reason, because of Mendoza. That's it.
Yeah.
They lost some key guys like everybody did. They still have some decent players. They got a really good player at every spot. Linebacker, secondary on defense. They've got the quarterback. They got 2 excellent receivers. The problem is now they're going up against a much more talented team in Oregon, and they're on the road. So they got to go to the West Coast. They got to go to the road. They haven't won in this spot yet. Maybe this will be the first time. But because of that, I just think that again, we're only talking about 1 score. So I'll take Oregon. I've been very impressed with Dante Moore so far. And it's very interesting because at the beginning of the season, it was like, well, look, Oregon lost all of this talent.
They also have a transfer quarterback this year who's playing well.
And then they bring in who's leading them. Redshirt sophomore quarterback, true freshman receiver.
Is that Dante Moore you're talking about, the quarterback?
Yep. True freshman receiver, which is right here. True freshman running back, which is right here. And their top tight end, by the way, Sadiq, is a redshirt sophomore. So 4 of their main offensive guys aren't even upperclassmen yet. That shows you how talented these kids are. And they do have veteran players on defense, really good players, pro prospects. So they're loaded with really good pro prospects once again. And I just think they're a little bit more I just think they're a little bit more talented than Indiana. So I'll
Greg, all
take
those
the Ducks.
freshmen you mentioned here, they're part of the reason that Oregon spends more money on their roster than any FBS program this year. That's the
more
reason
than Ohio State.
Yes, this year.
Hey, well, it worked for Ohio State last year. They
Well,
spent the most last year.
Well, if you can.
So if Oregon wins this year, what a precedent that's gonna say, huh? Spend the most and we'll win championships.
Yep. Come on, boosters. Where's your money? Pony up, guys. It's time. Andy, what do you think happens here? This is, I think, a marquee football game, and I think it's huge for both teams, obviously, both 5-0, as we mentioned.
Well, I mentioned in the NFL that the line comes into play about 15 to 17% of the time. It's a little bit higher in college football because obviously there are many more games with high point spreads where favorites are laying 45 and they win by 42 or something like that. It's about 25% where the dog covers in a game they lose. And I can see that being the situation here. Oregon has played some close games at home in recent years against quality teams. Last year was Boise State, where they survived early in the year. I think it was 34-32, something like that. I took a look at the record of Oregon and how they've been. I said Oregon's been virtually unbeatable at home, going 51-3 straight up since 2017, including 3-0 this season. But their ATS mark in this span is just 28-25 over that same span, although 3-0 this season. So it's hard to predict an outright upset in this game. I think what Cignetti has done, and he followed up what he did last year coming over from James Madison and the players he brought with him, and now they've got the transfer quarterback Mendoza from, I believe it was Cal, leading the way, that he's certainly changed the culture there. He's certainly improved the recruiting from where it had been down for so many years. So I can't pick the outright upset, but I can pick a competitive game, and that's one I wrote up, so I do have a score here. I'm going to say Oregon to edge by Indiana 30-27.
Oregon in a short win by 3 points.
Yeah, Indiana plus the points.
Yeah, Indiana would probably likely cash that ticket. I'm going to be with you in this game, Indiana, and a couple of reasons here. Number one, Kirk Cignetti, the head coach, is not James Franklin. The guy's a winner, and he's especially really, really good in conference games when his team is undefeated. He's 19-3 outright in these football games just like this, and he happens to also bring the better offense and the better defense into the contest. Now, you can argue and say those numbers are skewed because they were put up against 2 junior high schools and a couple of weak college football programs, but they are what they are. You beat who's in front of you, and you don't have to defend your case and point in that. But Indiana, better offense, better defense here. I think it's a big football game, and I think it's a liberal number to have to take with the team, the quality of Indiana. So put me down on the Hoosiers in this football game for my side in the contest.
By the way, just in addition to the quality of competition, Oregon did, I think it was a blowout win against Montana State, and the worst loss to of Oklahoma State was 69-3. So they've also, and then they played a Northwestern team and an Oregon State team. So maybe now they did have that win at Penn State against the first quality team that they faced, but and then they do come off a bye week, so that is an advantage for Oregon. But it's hard to go against Indiana until they and Greg pointed out correctly that they first of all, the 2 of those losses last year were in his first season, so he was still learning the league. And I think now Cignetti has, again, I think because he had a much better recruiting class, I think, last year than the program's had in many years. So I like in fact, it is quite possible, it's hard to knock out Ohio State, but it is quite possible we could see these teams, Indiana and Oregon, play 3 times this year, because they could meet for the Big Ten championship game, although you'd have to knock off Ohio State, and then they could end up somehow being matched up in the college football playoff.
I don't know if we've ever had that, Greg. Have we ever had a college football team meet another 3 times in one season?
I don't think so.
No.
2. We have had 2 met very often, regular season bowl games, but they may not have met in a championship game because often, many times, these conference championship games, were East versus West or North versus South for the division winner, so it was less likely.
Exactly.
I was perusing the Playbook football guide for the Oregon favorite role, and since 2019, they've been a home favorite single digits 4 times, and they won and covered all 4. So that goes back to 2019. Also, the other thing that really concerned me with Indiana was the Iowa game. We all knew that they'd come back down to earth after what happened the week before. But honestly, it's still Iowa. And for them to not win that game, at least early in the fourth quarter, I mean, that game went right down to the last couple of minutes of the game.
I think they scored a touchdown and then gave up a safety. It was a really odd 20 to 15
I don't think
score.
that was a good look because, if they want to be ranked if they want to be looked at like the Oregons and the Ohio States, this Iowa team is not from the Iowa teams from 3 or 4 years ago that would give all those big time programs problems. So that kind of worried me a little bit.
Didn't Oregon have a lead that they gave up at Penn State that they ended up winning the game in overtime? And then
they had the lead.
Yeah, and then now do we take anything away from Oregon, even though they're playing at home, because of what Penn State did the following week?
No, because what happened to Penn State last week was all because of what happened the week before. They have completely, and that's why you could even see it with James Franklin this week. I mean, we did the Penn State post-game show last night, and we had the post-game show after and the guys that covered Penn State, they've never seen James Franklin in the Monday presser. They've never seen him act like this. He looks like a deer in headlights. His confidence is shot. He has no answers. So they might actually be in trouble this week. They really might. I think they'll either blow out at Northwestern or they could lose to Northwestern. That's how fragile they are right now.
I was going to ask Mark, do you have any data, and maybe you don't have it coded to be able to do this, how Penn State under Franklin has done following one of those big game James losses? Obviously, it'd have to be regular season.
Yeah, the only reason it's not coded because I don't code who's ranked. And if I knew if I could tag each of those teams that were ranked, I could easily pull it up and take a spin and look at it. But unfortunately,
that's what I thought that would be the reason.
Right. Unfortunately,
then it would be easy to check. If they after losing as a they were favored against Oregon, weren't they?
Here. Last year they lost to Ohio State at home when they were undefeated. And then their next game against Washington at home, they won by 29 as a 13-point favorite. Mm-hmm. Let's see. The year before, they lost Ohio State the first game at Ohio State. They came back the next game, and they only beat Indiana by 9 at home as a 31-point favorite. So it's telling you both of those situations.
As follows, Well, they did well against Washington, and in the Indiana year they didn't. So not enough.
Yeah, but there was no excuse for this. None. UCLA was trash. Yeah. UCLA is terrible. Yeah. And there was no excuse for them, especially with their defense, to be giving up that much.
Just on talent alone, they should have beaten this team. Even was 24-20, they should have won that game.
Yeah, no excuse. None
whatsoever. That's why I'm concerned about what kind of team did Oregon really beat.
No. Again, it's fragile because of what they did in the Oregon game. Because it was everybody at Penn State had enough. Right. If you think we're laughing about James Franklin, just imagine what the fans do. The fans aren't backing James Franklin all these years.
No.
They feel like we do. They're sick and tired of James Franklin losing these big games. And when they lost to Oregon again, they had
after a nice comeback that they made, by the way.
Yeah, they just had it.
Yeah.
And so and again, nobody expected it, but after it happened, it was like predictable. Of course, they gave up. And just watch the game, watch the players, watch the top players, how they played. They did not play enthusiastically.
No, and in fact, the Baltimore Ravens must have been watching that same game because that's the way they played against Houston last Sunday. They quit early.
It happens. Yeah.
Well, guys, I got to get out of here. We had another great show, a lot of great content and information here. I know one thing. I look at this stuff, Andy, like this. If I weren't involved in the show or any of us individually weren't involved in the show and we happened to stumble across the show and we heard it, we'd be back for more. And that's what our whole
purpose. The thing that really makes it work is that we're not all yes sir, I agree. There are agreements and disagreements, and that's, I think, what makes for a healthy, entertaining, and informative presentation.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not all coming out of that same.
And we're not trying to disagree just to disagree. We're disagreeing because we disagree.
Exactly. Well, guys, I'm going to let you go. We'll look forward to doing it again next week. Hopefully, Jim will be in better voice. We hope so. And Going to wish you guys nothing but the best of luck this weekend. A big college football card and NFL on tap this week. Until then, for our listening audience out there, once again, this is Marc Lawrence reminding you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.
See you tomorrow, everybody.